It might come as a shock for some of you to hear, considering the topics that I cover on this channel: self improvement, philosophy, psychology. I'm living the life that I want to live, that I should have some good advice about success. Moreover, I must be kind of a successful person. I don't think that I am. In fact, the best perspective that I can give you about being successful is by not being like me. I know it's like a radical way of thinking about things. And it's not just me just trying to be humble. Like I'm going to actually give a logical case as to why I'm saying what I'm saying here. Like most things, it's just going to come down to like basic human psychology. But this YouTube channel is called Lost in the Labyrinth, man. It's not, how to get out of the labyrinth or how to slay the Minotaur. I'm lost in the labyrinth, so I'm just going to be real with you. So the best way for me to give you an idea of what I'm talking about is to give you an example of who I was in my early 20s. Right now, I'm 30 years old. And in my early 20s, I was much more unscrupulous, much more money hungry, much more success hungry. I was really on that grind, I would kind of do whatever it took to get a commission check. I worked in sales. I wouldn't go so far as to scam people, but I definitely would stretch what otherwise would be what I thought was ethical in order to get a sale. Moreover, I didn't do any like really bad stuff. I don't want you to think that. It's more just like, because I was doing personal training sales, right? If somebody really had some problems, some self-image problems that probably went far beyond just fitness, I would find a way to make it and have a conversation with them to make it like, oh, you're having all these problems, therefore you need to lose body fat. And that's the main thing that's holding you back in life, that sort of thing. And back then, even though I was always like a creative person, I always sort of pushed that part of me down. I don't know if it's part of my Japanese upbringing to like not want to stand out, or because, being a creative artistic type is cool now. But back when I was in middle school and high school, you were a freaking nerd if you were that way. And I was always an athletic kid. So I always steered more toward being like an athlete and stuff. And even though the artistic stuff sort of interested me, I never really actually made that part of my identity. And because I didn't do that, I didn't really pursue those things. But as I got older, I started to become more honest with myself. I'm like, yeah, I am a creative person. I like to make things. I like to be original. I don't like to follow like a certain system or a path. And funny enough, as soon as I started to realize that about myself, and as soon as I had the courage to actually go through with being creative, going against the grain, that's when I started to see less and less success. I know it sounds maybe crazy because we're taught, especially, Americans, were taught growing up, you can be whatever you want to be when you grow up. You got to express yourself. If you're just yourself, you will see success. People will see you for how you are. And man, that sounds nice. I just don't think that it's true. And so, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to give you some psychological examples or just some examples in general. So, there's this one book that I really like, this internet marketer. His name is Russell Brunson. He's the owner of ClickFunnels.com. It's a whole service, but he's written a lot of books about marketing. And in one of his books, he talks about how you don't want to be the pioneer with arrows in his back. So what does he mean by that? Well, back in the American frontier, way back in the day, the pioneers going out west, most of the time there would be like some super giga chad courageous explorer guy leading the charge, just going out into the wilderness where nobody's been before, and that guy almost always died. At least in his metaphor. I mean, it stands to reason that's probably what happened, right? And so the whole thing of arrows in his back is that these creative people will go through and do a creative endeavor, and then they'll get shot and they'll die. And so other people behind them will be like, oh, well, clearly we shouldn't take that path. And so they just wait until, one of these courageous pioneer people, these visionaries, whatever you want to call it in the modern day, do this creative thing. And then people follow in those footsteps. It's a very safe path to success, but it's also a path to success that's almost guaranteed if you follow a certain system. there's this phrase in marketing. I'm not a good businessman now. I kind of used to be because I used to follow these systems, and now I'm just like, I hate all these systems. I want to just be a creative dweeb, whatever. But I know all this stuff because I studied it religiously for a while. So it's about it's in the field of copywriting. So if you don't know what copywriting is where you write. You're basically a writer. It's sales in print, basically. So you sell people based off of text-based things. Sometimes it's email marketing, sometimes it's articles or blogs, whatever. So let's say that I have a product and I don't know how to sell it and I don't want to be on camera, then somebody will like write out a whole blurb to help convince people to sell. Anyway, there's this phrase within copywriting, and you're ready to hear it? Because you think of that. You think copywriting, you might think of what I just described. You think that might be a creative endeavor. It's not. There's this famous phrase, and it goes like this. Good copywriters copy, great copywriters steal. So a supposed creative endeavor being a writer, right? Because that's basically what you are as a copywriter. A famous saying or a common platitude is to just don't be creative. Just do the shit that works. Don't be the guy with the arrows in your back. Just follow the guy that made it through safely, the 1 out of 100. Ignore the 99 that courageous people that just got shot in the back trying to attempt something new, and just follow the system. And so I see this with advertisements that are advertised to me as somebody who's technically a business owner, I guess. The new one that I've seen is people say, oh, we're going to give you XYZ clients and help your sales funnel or whatever. And if we don't, then you don't pay. And I thought to myself, oh, well, that's a pretty damn good offer. Let me see more about it. And then once that happened, the advertising pixel caught me. And then it just started recommending me to all these different people. And for me, I was just like, oh, this is a really good marketing promise. I mean, this is really powerful. And then I started to see ads from all these other different people, all these internet gurus saying the same exact shit, the same exact pitch. They're like, da, 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 or you don't pay. Whether they actually still make you pay or not, I have no idea. I didn't hire any of these guys. But that just goes to show you, it's like clearly somebody succeeded with that campaign. Someone was very courageous in trying that thing. He didn't have any arrows in his back. He didn't have a bunch of Native Americans to shoot him down. And then, so because of that, these other people are just like, hey, that worked. Let's follow this guy. And so, that's how it happened. That's an example, I guess. So all that to say, we tend to like creative people, just people in general. Creative people tend to be interesting. We encourage people to be creative. We encourage kids to be creative. But in a weird way, you really are setting them down a certain trap, because the vast majority of creatives will not be successful. Will live a life of hardship. They will struggle to make ends meet. And they still have implanted in their mind from a young age, oh, well, being creative is good. If I'm just myself, if I'm expressing myself, eventually I'll see success. People who are starving artists, that whole stereotype, I think people have this idea that they think they're going to be starving artists forever. No, any starving artist, because I know a lot of them, and I guess I kind of am one. Don't worry, I'm not actually starving, but you know what I mean. Like, all of us think that eventually we're going to hit some sort of success. We're going to have our big break, and then we're just going to and that's why, because we believe that, we are willing to go through the crucible right now. I think the vast majority of artistic types, creatives, if they could go in a time machine, or they had something that could tell them the future and they knew for certain that that was their fate, if they knew that they would be a starving artist type perpetually forever, I think very few of them would still keep going down the path that they're on. Now is the time where I mention Nietzsche, because I can't go a single freaking video without mentioning him. But this is relevant. So in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the prologue, he has there's this guy on a tightrope wire, and this guy is going across the wire, and he falls and he basically dies. But Zarathustra, who's kind of the mouthpiece for Nietzsche, within that work, says that this is a super admirable man, that if you are an admirable person, you should be willing to die for an ideal. That creative people, the vast majority of them are going to be failures. There's another part, I think it's in Beyond Good and Evil, might be Human All Too Human. I don't remember. It doesn't matter which text, but he says that behind every single like successful person, I'm probably messing up his words. I have his books behind me. I should just look at it, but whatever. But he says something along the lines of like, behind every successful person, there's actually somebody who's quite mediocre and not really worthy of praise. And then he says, behind an average mediocre artist, you might actually find somebody of high moral character, somebody who's extraordinary. But Nietzsche acknowledged, and he was a good example of this himself, that most artists, most creatives will never see success in their lifetime. It's a great tragedy because sometimes it's just circumstantial. Like, imagine you're just born in the wrong age that isn't capable of appreciating your artwork or what you're saying. I mean, Nietzsche himself was that way. People during his time, because he was so untimely, they didn't appreciate what he was saying. And then people were like, oh, this dude's a super genius way after he died. Like, look at all the things he predicted what would happen in the 20th century, you know? So he knew that firsthand. And so me personally, that terrifies me. I don't look at myself as a mind at the level of Nietzsche's. That's not me self-deprecating. I just think that's factually true. That's okay. It's good to be honest with yourself. But if somebody as innovative as him and somebody as creative as him couldn't make it happen themselves, like, that fear is always there. And for me, I've kind of accepted that I'm probably not really ever going to be that successful financially or maybe even status wise going down this path. But it still scares me, man. It's just not, I don't like the idea of like, because I'm 30 years old now. And when you turn 30, you start to look at the world a little bit differently. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You don't think that way in your 20s. You're like, oh, in 30 it's be fine. When you turn 30, you start thinking differently. You start thinking about, you know, what's my legacy going to be like? Do I want a family, et cetera, et cetera? You know, the world starts to become and feel a lot more real. And the thought of me still sort of being like this struggling, creative, artistic type of person when I turn 40, that terrifies me. It terrifies me. Because I refuse to, I want to have a family when I'm in my 30s. I think I met the right girl now to have that family with. But there's no way I'm going to bring kids into this world that I can't give them a very great, fulfilling life, right? And the reality of things is that you need to be able to provide as a man. Right now, I only have to really provide for myself, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I just sort of go through these things on a daily basis. I know I'm sounding a bit real right now, but well, let's go back to the topic of the video. I think this is all related still. You know, for me personally, every time I've tried to be creative, innovative, trying to reinvent the wheel, not just for the sake of reinventing the wheel, but because like that's my heart and soul tells me to like do something different. That's the heart of being a creative person. It always fails. It doesn't fail from like an existential standpoint. It's very meaningful to me, but from a financial standpoint, usually it doesn't work out. And again, from a marketing standpoint of what I talked about with the arrows in the back and all that, that perfectly makes sense. You know, human psychology is so complicated, especially quantifying it in any sort of way. So when marketers find something that somehow just captures the imagination of a large amount of people within a certain niche, they just start spamming that thing. It's like in some video game, if you find some hack or if you just like spam A, you can like defeat the boss. Like, you're not going to try anything else. You're just going to keep spamming A until it doesn't work anymore. And I think there's also kind of like a survivorship bias when it comes to creatives where you think, oh, well, I know all these creative people online that I follow and they're very successful. Dude, that's because those are the only people you see. For every single person like that, there are hundreds of people, maybe thousands, who try the same stuff and fail. And some of them are just as talented, just as hardworking as those people. It's just that for whatever reason, the thing that they're passionate about just doesn't resonate with whatever time period they're in. Maybe they said one or two controversial things and the algorithm just shadow bans them and they have no idea. Who the hell knows? All that to say, as somebody who has just let his creative side just kind of dictate his life and willingly let his creative side do that for the past 5 or 6 years now, and also having the perspective of simply just following a system, not trying to be creative, just doing what works for the previous 5 years before that in my early 20s and seeing a lot of success with that, I can tell you for sure that if you choose to be a creative person, you are going down a path of failure. Sorry, I don't know why I started laughing there. I think that's just kind of like a coping mechanism or something for my pain. Not to sound too dark, but I think a lot of people do that. Like, you know, when you're in an uncomfortable situation, people start to they start to laugh. I think maybe it was one of those situations because this really isn't a laughing matter. It's a pretty serious thing. So, but all of this begs the question, if the solution is simply to just find a formula and a system that works, and then you just keep spamming it and not questioning it and not trying to do something different, why don't you just do that? Why put yourself through this pain? And this is something that only I think other creative people could understand. I can't. It's like at this point in my life, it's like, okay. People like to use the Matrix analogy a lot, right? So it's like once you've been red pilled, like it's really impossible to like blue pill yourself again and plug yourself back into the Matrix. I mean, maybe technically with the help of the agents, they can like wash your brain away or whatever, but they have no obligation to do that. They could just like throw you back in there or just kill you, and you would never know that you even had that agreement with them in the first place. So I feel like it's kind of a similar thing where it's like once you realize you're a creative person, once you really just dive into that, it's almost like there's not really any going back. Once you enter the labyrinth and you decide to go slay the Minotaur by any means possible, and you get lost in there, you're pretty fucked. You can't find your way out. You basically live in the labyrinth now, and you've chosen to do that. You know, I don't want any sympathy. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I apologize if that seemed like that was my intention with this video. That's not at all. I've chosen this path. I've chosen this path to be a creative. I've chosen this path to do whatever it takes to be able to live a creative lifestyle where I get to do whatever I want and I'm not beholden to other people or obligated to other people. That means me moving halfway around the world to a very affordable country to be able to do that, to sustain myself. And I just happen to be lucky to live in a place that's just amazing. And I have amazing friends, and I get to play fun sports and all these creative activities all the time. It's freaking awesome. So I feel very blessed. But I think something that's quite clear, and I've sort of accepted, is that I'm probably never going to be a huge financial success. But it's okay. It's okay. Like if that happens, great. But it's almost like I just don't think it's going to happen. And I'm really uncompromising at this point of like, I'm not going to compromise on what I want to do in this life just to earn an extra few bucks here and there, because I refuse. Once you start taking those red pills, it's hard to force yourself to start taking those blue pills again. So the point of this video, if there is a point, how to be successful, don't be like me. Don't be creative. Find something that works and just spam the crap out of it. And yeah, just do that. There's a famous quote by Schopenhauer, Arthur Schopenhauer, famous German philosopher and a big inspiration of Nietzsche's. It goes something along the lines of, talent is when somebody can hit a target nobody else can hit. Genius is when somebody sees a target that nobody else can see. And I had this video before where I said, well, you know, are you a genius? This is why I'm a genius. This is why a lot of other people are genius. I think I can see targets that other people can't see, but most people don't give a fuck about it, much less want to pay money for it. And I'm sure there's other people, there are for sure other people that see those targets as well. And maybe some of them are financially, make a lot of money from whatever, good for them, if so. But I feel like a lot of them are, probably don't. And basically what I'm saying is don't try to be a genius. Don't. Because a genius is somebody who just is creative. They create new values. They're like the higher men of Nietzsche's. But if you really just want to and you can live, I'm not saying this with contempt or anything at all. This is the advice that I give most people, is that, you can achieve greatness. You can do great things without being this like super creative person. You can create a great life for yourself and other people, without being sort of a burden to other people. Like, I feel like creative people, they can end up being really freaking annoying to their relatives, to sometimes their friends, their close loved ones, because they're just so they're so enamored with their work and their mission. And especially a lot of times they're just obsessed. They're like with something that most people don't get or don't care about, right? So it's just like kind of frustrating, It's like imagine that you are the world, like you were just so passionate about basket weaving, and more specifically speed basket weaving, and nobody can basket weave at as a higher quality or as a highest speed as you can, and you work your ass off on it, but there's no market for it. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to pay you to be a speed basket weaver, right? Even though that's like your life's mission and purpose, and you know for a fact that that's why you're put here on this earth. That's kind of an extreme example, but you get my point. But especially if you know that, it's just hard for you to let that go, man. It's like, because that becomes like the meaning of life itself for you, So yeah, it's just all this to say, don't be creative. If you don't feel like you're a creative person, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad, okay? Look, because I am, and a lot of times it fucking sucks, all right? Just being real. Don't try to be creative. If people say that you're unoriginal or whatever, you should take it as a compliment. Just find something that has already been proven to work and just become an expert at it. That's how you become financially successful. You don't want to have arrows in your back. Trust me. I don't know if there's a point to this video. It's very congruent with the new name of the YouTube channel, Lost in Labyrinth, though. But yeah, anyway. Speaking of, okay, so I'll just tell you how I make my living now. So really what I do is I have my Patreon, which doesn't generate a lot of money. The thing that generates me money is coaching. More specifically, I run these group coaching sessions where we do shadow work and that type of stuff, like really digging deep into our masculinity, what it means to be a man, and digging into the sides of ourselves that usually we felt ashamed of in a more sort of feminized society. I don't really say that with contempt, but so for example, like when you're in school, just because boys are kind of annoying to deal with, and you have most teachers are women, the teachers will basically tell you to be more like girls, right? Behave more like girls so that, you're not so annoying. Well, that little seed then turns into you being afraid to ask girls out in middle school, and being afraid of conflict. And then now you're an adult and you're just afraid of everything, and you're afraid of saying the wrong thing, and you're always just being defensive, right? And so with the shadow work stuff that we do, in the group, is we try to uncover those things, and we get more in touch with our masculine side, right? We literally have arguments with each other just so that we can stand up for ourselves, and we can actually vocalize disagreements, which is just like such a naughty thing nowadays in a very agreeable, PC world that we have now. So anyway, that's what I do. And if you sign up on Patreon, doesn't matter what tier, you get 50% off of all of those coaching services, that group coaching, which I purposely make very affordable, because most people who are my clients are quite young, early 20s, sometimes even late teens. And so they don't really have a lot of money lying around, right? So I can't expect them to pay tons of money. So I keep it very affordable. And on top of that affordability, it's 50% off if you sign up on Patreon. And that's kind of how I sustain myself. And it's not just how I sustain myself. It helps me with video ideas, and it's helping me with the book that I'm writing right now. It's helping me with the other creative endeavors that I have. So if you really dig the type of stuff I talk about on this channel, you want to get to know me personally and talk to me and be part of our community, then you can sign up through Patreon. Yeah. I didn't expect this to be sort of a pitch for my Patreon, and not just my Patreon, my group coaching, but the guys in my group coaching, they say that I should promote it more, and they're totally right. See, this just goes to show you, if you're like this creative-minded type person, you just like forget about stuff that you should be promoting like that. It's a really solid group of dudes, and I will probably promote it a bit more in the future. And anyway, enough of a plug there. The main takeaway of this video: don't be creative, because you don't want arrows in your back. But if you are creative and you just can't help yourself and you want to go explore the world and you're willing to risk having arrows shot in your back, well then, this is the right YouTube channel for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next video. I really appreciate you, whoever you are, for even just the fact that this channel has 1,000 subscribers. That's amazing. Thanks for watching, man. See you next time.